Good morning. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Sam Smith, the CEO of Vishion. Good afternoon. In your case, Sam, how you doing?
Good morning. In your case, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you could join us today. So can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
Sure. Yeah. I have a background in startups. I started at a startup about 7 years ago. That company got acquired. The founder took me on to the next startup. I asked for a higher role. And since I got very comfortable being at the table when I had the idea for Vision, I ended up quitting my MBA program. I was halfway through my MBA and starting my own company, which in its own right was a very intense MBA program. That's basic about me. I have a background in sales and customer experience, and I started a technology company. So I'm one of those proof points that it is possible if you have ideas for some sort of tech company, even though you have no dev experience, that you can make it happen.
This is true. Actually, what you really need is good technologists to make your dream come true, right?
Exactly. I think the sales and the dev are equally important, and that's one of those things that seems to slip by the wayside. Only because Zoom, if you're starting a technology company, that is the most important aspect of it. But there's so many elements of a business that are super essential, including the other half, marketing and sales.
Yeah, and then being in the Carolina area, you have a lot of good technology people there, a lot of good colleges where you are.
Yeah, it's getting better. People are moving here. It was very much, I started my company almost 3 years ago in July. A lot of people are moving here. The big theme was San Francisco, like still, even when we started the company, was be in San Francisco, be on the West Coast. But there seems to be a mass exodus to places like Charlotte, and we're getting a lot of developers. A lot of the larger financial institutions here are dragging them out here, and a lot of them are hungry to try to do something else. So yeah, it's an exciting time for us, and yeah.
Yes, and I've been to your city a few times. I can attest to it. It is a very nice city. I've always had
it is pretty nice. I'm from Washington, D.C., so it's a little bit different down here. It took me some time to get used to. It's definitely a slower pace, but it's growing at such a rapid rate, even with COVID, that it's pretty nice. We like it. We'll probably stay here for the long haul.
Well, good. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as an employee and an employer?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of experience with remote because one of the startups that I worked at, the reason I actually got involved in startup life was because they let me go remote. I moved to be with my husband in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky. Pikeville, Kentucky, the town had less than 5,000 people. There was no coffee shops, 3 restaurants. It was coming from DC. It was not a great transition, but luckily that's what got me on the path that I'm on. So that was my first remote experience, and it was tough. I think the transition from going from someone who can showcase, this is what I'm working on every day, you see me, I see you seeing me, that was a really hard transition. And then coming now to, we went back to being in person, then to being remote. Even with COVID, remote's taken kind of a different type of tone. Especially with the assumption that everyone's remote, that completely changes the dynamic. I thought we were pretty equipped as a startup. We're primarily remote to begin with. We have a co-working space, but it wasn't a necessity to be there. We had certain meetings you had to, but primarily remote. And I thought it was going to be an easy transition with COVID because we were already so familiar, but the effects of everyone being at home, the family being at home, the stress that comes with COVID, it definitely changed the dynamics of how we interact online and remotely. So how we change the way in which we approach our stand-ups, our regular meetings. And honestly, because you know that everyone's at home and probably not doing anything, you have to set certain boundaries that before you weren't as concerned about, but now it has to be pretty clear, like, hey, I'm spending an hour going on a run, or I'm spending just a mental health end of the day, those types of boundaries.
Yeah, and when you were working in Kentucky, the real question is, since you were remote, what kind of internet connection did you have? Because that's the important thing.
You know what? It is. No, the internet connection was good. So we were okay there. Honestly, the hardest part about the first time being remote was teaching my significant other what it meant to be remote. And even though I'm at home, it doesn't mean that I'm tasked with also doing all of the home things.
Yes.
There's a balance. And we as a couple of we're great at doing the partnership realm to begin with. So, and it's funny because of Kentucky and that experience, this for us was very easy as far as a transition of how we divvy up the workload, what the expectations are, taking it easy on each other, and making sure there is a separation of, even though I'm at home, I'm still working. So yeah, the internet was good there. Internet now is actually more challenging. A lot of people on my team too, my family, it seems like we're all sucking up the internet too much.
Yes.
So there are definitely times we've had the internet guy come out already twice since COVID started. Yeah. So that has been actually a challenge.
Interesting. I won't ask you who your provider is. So.
It's AT&T.
Okay.
So,
well, two-wire.
yes.
That's why two-wire. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a yeah. So, but they came out, they fixed it. It's been working ever since. We'll give it 2 weeks and we'll see what happens.
And to be fair, I'm on AT&T two-wire now. So.
Okay. There you go.
So and then again, I live in Silicon Valley. So.
There must be an edge there. There has to be. Charlotte, we haven't quite gotten there yet.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think can be done differently to make it more effective?
Yeah. Well, so with Vishion, we work with interior design and the design of office space, and we can go into what Vishion does in a bit. But just the idea of how people worked compared to how they're going to be planning to work in the future is not only something that we discuss as an organization, but it's something that the people who we serve are discussing as well. Does everyone need to be in the office now that things are already set up and everything seems to be working okay? Should we keep it this way? I think that one of the issues, and I am making this COVID relevant, and I hope that's okay, just because it seems to be the easiest to relate to at the moment. I think the most difficult challenge of remote that people are facing right now is if they have families. With productivity, it's completely different than what you would experience if you were remote in a normal situation. So that's completely throwing the expectations, excuse me, of what your bosses are seeing and how attentive you are. And on top of that, just your overall mental health. This is a really hard time. It's hard to stay on all the time. Those are challenges. I think what people are also seeing is it's a lot easier to pay attention when you don't have someone coming up to your desk all the time, asking you questions. Now those might be your kids. Someone like me who doesn't have kids, not as much of an issue, but there is a give and take that I think that a lot of people are taking into consideration. I think there are a lot of efficiencies that people will find as well when you start to move remote, whether it's those meetings that you've been having and you're like, oh, we never really needed to have those. There are like Asana or different tools. There are different ways in which we can get this work done and be more efficient even though we are remote. It also opens up how we communicate. It is a lot harder when you're remote at first to really understand how the expectations are different in how you're communicating. And I don't think a lot of managers tackle that well as far as here is how you should change for me so I feel comfortable with you being remote, but also how I need to change for you so the expectations are clear as to what you need to communicate. That's, I think, one of the largest challenges probably people are facing right now, whether it's understanding the tone of people typing through Slack, the expectations of you should have your camera on when you're on Zoom because we want to see that you're present. There are little things that I think all of us are learning right now. And now that I think we're functioning, being 2 months almost into this, people are seeing it can be pretty great to be remote.
Yeah, no, there's definitely pros and cons. The traffic, the less, pollution is less, all those things, less stress.
I think this is the world fighting back, to be honest. They're showing what's going on.
Yes. So what is the story behind Vishion, and who are your customers? What's your product? All that stuff.
Yeah, I'll give you a little background of what we do. So about 3 years ago, my husband and I purchased a very expensive bed, and like millennials, we went out to a very expensive dinner to celebrate. And we were at this nice restaurant in Davidson, North Carolina, and we were sitting at the bar, and this bar had this beautiful shade of green. And my husband said, "Oh, wouldn't it be great to get nightstands in that shade of green to match the headboard that we just bought?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's an amazing idea." So I went on Pinterest, I went on Google. I couldn't find anything, which was annoying. And being in a startup and being in the startup mindset of being able to fix it, you're like, I know exactly what it would take to make this possible. The startups I was at previously were all dev startups or dev related. So I was lucky enough to get an understanding of just at least the basic functions of how things work. And from there, Vishion was born. So we started as a color search engine and home planning tool. So you have the ability to save your color palettes, plan around the palettes of your home. We have partnership with Sherwin-Williams. So you can take your favorite Sherwin-Williams paint color or the paint color that's on your wall and find a complementary or exact matching rug, curtains, couch, just with the thesis that color is one of the driving elements that enables you to create your designs. It's an extremely important factor, especially if you are really into home design and you want things to match. We're launching this summer something called Vishion Pro, and it's the ability to connect to the people who we serve, which are interior designers, architects, commercial designers, those folks who are now suffering a bit from COVID, either with frozen jobs or the concern of new jobs coming about because of this very virtual reality that we're living in, when typically they live in a very high touch realm. So interior designers or home specialists who are offering virtual services will be able to list virtual services on Vishion this summer. What we're calling it is, instead of do it yourself, you could do it with an expert. And that's Vishion Pro that you're going to be able to see very soon. So we're an all-encompassing home planning and color search engine tool.
Wow, that's great. So you're in the process right now of building that new product?
Yeah, actually, it's been the last few weeks have been crazy. So we started as a mobile app because we wanted to be able to give interior designers and anyone who's caring about design their colors on the go. So you take your colors with you when you're in the store, you can catalog all that good stuff. Now that everyone's at home, having it on the go is not as essential. So we spent the last 6 weeks. As of this week, our color search engine's live on the web, and our planning tool is live on the web next week. And then that'll be live in July. So we have been just like cranking away.
So as long as you're on the web, why don't you give us your website address?
Vishion.co. I don't know if you can see it, but it's Vishion with an H. Okay. I know, cursive, and it's backwards, so that's really challenging. But yeah, it's Vishion with an H. So Vishion.co.
Okay, great. So how did you incorporate the idea of remote at your company? I mean, was it something you started with, or was it forced on you recently?
So we've always had it ingrained in what we're doing, and the idea was to go into a physical office space eventually. We have a co-working space that we meet at regularly. That's where we have our brainstorming sessions, in-person meetings. But otherwise, it didn't seem very essential to be in person. The cost as a small business owner or a startup was something that I didn't want to take on until it was absolutely necessary, and that doesn't seem too necessary until you have a certain size team. It's something that there are deficits or things that you miss out on being in person. One of them was an example. We had a design that we're doing for a landing page. A lot of my guys are back end guys. They're not front end guys. So a lot of the designs that you're seeing are me, which I have no design experience, but describing to someone like where you need extra padding, or where you should move something, or even the sizes of the images on a portfolio, like that communication process is elongated because I have to map it out. I have to physically show it, put it into a document and send it. So it's not like you can go to a desk and share. So it's always been a plan to go physical. But to be honest, with everything that's happening, I think the enjoyment of many of the people who are on my team will probably stay virtual until we get to a certain size. And I guess that's all dependent upon what happens next.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of companies are in that same wait and see attitude right now.
Yeah, we're lucky because we didn't have that type of cost that we have to account for. So we're extremely lucky in that sense. And our co-working space hasn't been charging us, and it's a month to month anyways. So It's one of those things that, yeah, it's a reality that we've been able to work through.
Very good. So there are companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. How important do you think this will be going forward for companies like yourself that, you like you just said, you don't really have a UX person, UI UX person on your staff, right? So how important do you think these types of services will be?
I mean, these are the types of services that we've used the whole time. For Vision in particular, our mobile app, we outsourced the UX for that. I don't have a background in it. No one on my team does. So there are small tasks that we do feel it's more or it's beneficial to find others who specialize and who spend time in it and who have a portfolio in it. There is a definite benefit to that. I personally, there are certain elements that I do think that your team should do. For us, every line of code was written by our team. I find that important just to ensure there's no throwaway code. Not to say that it doesn't happen anyways, but the likelihood, if you've been hands-on from the beginning, is less. And that's something that I've learned just from my past startups. But there are a bunch of smaller jobs that we have brought on others to help us accomplish. One of the primary reasons, not only to find someone quickly, that's probably the biggest one, is finding help quickly. Because Charlotte, we are growing, but people, because there are so few developers, they are way more expensive. So a cost benefit analysis, it's easy to see if you wanted to find someone on contract who can do the UX work for especially a flat rate with an expectations and milestone set is definitely the way to go about it, compared to someone who's part-time and figuring it out while doing something else, where usually it gets kicked down the road because their full-time job took so much of their time today. And so you have to really weigh the importance of what is something that I want a lot of control over as far as how the quality. Not saying that the front end work that we outsourced wasn't amazing. But for someone like me who does not have a development background, that stuff is a little bit more tangible and able to see when that's how I decipher as a owner of a business, what is going to be outsourced, what's going to be internal. Some outsourced stuff that we've done too is just like SEO, things that are just super technical, even from a marketing standpoint that, again, I'm not going to find an SEO specialist to bring on part-time or full-time. If someone can train us or update us a bit, that's perfectly fine. And we view that type of mentality for everything.
Yeah, and I have an extensive background in development, and I can tell you, developers generally do not make good UI UX people.
That's what I'm seeing. It's just fine.
But they're very good at what they do. Developers. They can make things happen that you didn't even know were possible. But then
very true.
I'm a firm believer, if you're going to have a mobile app and a website, get a really good UI UX person. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, there's some stuff that you can fudge. There's other stuff that you're like, it's tough for us because our target market too is interior designers. They have an eye for design. They have expectations that it looks nice. So you're like, oh, I could put out an MVP that it works. You could do that. But then someone will come to the website and they'll be like, okay, who put this? What is this? Are they trying to put spamware on my website or whatever? Like, you want to make sure your design at least has some sort of credibility factor to it. So
yeah, I could tell you for a fact, if someone were to ask me to do the UI UX, the only person that would use that site is my mother.
That's it. Yeah. Well, you know what though? If she could figure out how to use it, then you're good.
Good. Good point.
I'll tell you, we are launching some of our stuff on the web next week for the planning tools, and I watched my dad do it yesterday, and I'll tell you, the stuff that he was like, I was like, oh God. Yeah. So it's more important about functionality than it is beauty. There is definitely an essence, and it's such small nuances of things that you would never think about. I could go on for days of the things that I'm like, oh, that's so obvious. But there definitely is an age discrepancy for what's obvious and what's not.
Yes, this is absolutely true. So, well, Samantha, I want to thank you for your time today. This has been very enlightening.
Oh, good. I'm
And no, not at all. And I want to wish you luck on your launch. You have
Oh,
a couple
thanks.
launches. I mean, you have multiples, it sounds like, coming up, right?
I know it's this giant cohesive tool that we've been building over time. So it's very exciting for us. Yeah, definitely. Check it out if you need to search by color or find anything, plan your next project, look at vision.co.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.